It's time to sit down with someone you know. It's time for Debórah, bringing you the stars, the stories, and the performances. With your host, Debórah Benton. The Debórah Show is brought to you in part by these fine sponsors. AO Construction and Masonry Restoration Experts, specializing in marble, granite, sandstone, terracotta, and limestone. J.E. Washington Funeral Services Incorporated, faithfully serving you for 31 years. The Union Baptist Church Family with Pastor Michael H. Harrison. Dr. Hill and Associates in Women's Health of the Mahoning Valley Incorporated. And by Eagles Christian Preschool and Child Care. One school, two great locations, Youngstown and Warren. Join me as I chat with former international ballet dancer and now mother, wife, dance teacher, and philanthropist, Anita Lynn. Welcome to the show, Anita.
Thank you, Debórah.
I'm so glad you were able to come. I've watched your career, the work that you've done over the years, and I have to applaud you because of you, so many young women in particular have poise and grace and also have a future.
You're sweet. Thank you very much. It's just really been my pleasure to train and mentor our future in young women and young men.
Now, your name has become synonymous with Ballet Western Reserve, the dance school. Mm-hmm. But I'd like to roll the clock back a little bit, and if you can give us a snapshot of Anita Lynn, the person growing up, how you became the person that I am today.
Yeah,
right. The phenomenal woman that you are today.
Well, my parents are first generation here, and my father is from China.
Okay.
My mother is from Hong Kong. They met in Hong Kong. My father actually left China to get an education in music. And during the time that he was in Hong Kong, the Cultural Revolution happened in China, and his family encouraged him not to return. His brothers who were educated were imprisoned for being educated, and subsequently died in prison. So
wow.
My father's past has taught me so much about perseverance and the love of the arts and education. He then got his master's at the Paris Opera and then moved to the United States to work on his doctrines. While he was in the States, he established citizenship, and they decided to stay in the United States. I am the fourth child. I have three older brothers. And
so you're the baby.
I am the baby and the only girl, and really spoiled by my brothers. But I just have learned, my father has been my role model all my life. I was born in Shawnee, Oklahoma.
Oh, wow.
Went to my first ballet to see the Tulsa Ballet perform the Nutcracker at the age of 6. And my mother tells me that I leaned over during the first snow scene of Nutcracker and said, "That's what I'm going to be when I grow up." Wow. And I guess I formed that image of being a ballerina in my head from the age of 6.
Were there any dancers in your family prior to?
No dancers, but my mother claims that she had the gift.
Well, of course, just not the opportunity.
Right. And I believe I really, got a lot of her poise, and I've got my father's musicality, being a doctor of music. And I started dance training at the age of 8 in Oklahoma, and then we moved to Louisville, Kentucky, and I enrolled in a school that was not a competition school, but more of an educational, professional level school, and had wonderful teachers there that gave me a great background. Cecile Heller, who was from the Paris Opera, had a company and school there and aligned herself with the University of Louisville. They had a preparatory dance department there, and so received my training there.
If I can just inject a question here. With your father having trained in Paris, was there any camaraderie there as a result of both of them having
Yes,
been? Okay.
Yes, there were. In fact, my father was teaching at the seminary there in music. My dance teacher, Cecile Heller, they shared a common, love of Paris. My father could speak French, and at that time they collaborated, and they combined the music from the seminary and the orchestra that my father led with Cecile's dance company, and we did many collaborations.
Wow.
And I believe that, that set forth kind of an image in my mind, and that will be later on in our talk about Ballet Western Reserve and my love of collaboration. But I was in high school during a really tough time. I think we were chatting earlier that it was at the end of the Vietnam War, and going to high school at that time was very difficult for my brothers and myself because we looked Vietnamese, although we were Chinese.
So now, excuse me, before the war, were you aware that, just growing up, that you looked different, or that there was,
Yes.
you were aware?
In Shawnee, Oklahoma, we were the only Asians, and there were, I think children are pretty forthcoming in what they say, and not realizing how it can hurt other children. And so we lived through that time, and my father decided to further his education and went on to Louisville, Kentucky, and there it was still feeling like perhaps the Deep South that just wasn't as, everyone was white, blonde, blue-eyed, men and women, and so it was a different time at that time, and it was more difficult for us growing up. My brothers tell me that when I was really small in Shawnee, Oklahoma, we would go to Tulsa to shop with our good friends, and they would take us in the station wagon, and we'd all pile in, and when we'd get to the gasoline station, my brother said that he got out and he saw the whites-only bathroom, and he looked at my mom and said, well, where do I go? And it was just a different world at that time.
Wow. And
our friends who were from Oklahoma just took them by the hand and said, you're coming with me, and he took us all in.
And you guys probably didn't realize that was only actually anti-black. Yeah.
Exactly. But my brothers were confused.
Right,
and
because they knew that they were not white.
Right. So we grew up in a time where then, fast forward to the Vietnam War, where we felt so discriminated against. It was a tough time in high school. I was never asked to the prom. I had to ask a boy from my neighborhood to go with me, and it was just it was really kind of a difficult time. The person I looked up to the most who just, put his nose to the grindstone was my father. And he taught me that if you're going to choose the arts as a profession, then you work like mad to always be punctual, on time. He worked through a lot of prejudice. He taught me how to overcome it. He taught me that, just be courteous and respectful to everyone, even those who hurt you. And that kind of set forth, my goals for life. He was just, someone that I really, really looked up to. He's 88 right now,
wow.
Still going strong.
What
still,
a celebration
conducting
of life.
at times. Yes.
So we're going to take a commercial break, and when we come back, we're going to get more from Anita Lynn. Right back after this.
The Debórah Show is brought to you in part by L.E. Black Phillips and Holden Funeral Home, located at 1951 McGuffey Road in Youngstown, Ohio. L.E. Black Phillips and Holden Funeral Home, honoring the legacy of life. And we're back on the Debórah Show visiting with Anita Lynn. So we were talking about how you grew up, and this is interesting because we don't often hear the other sides of prejudice in the country. And so you as an Asian American, particularly right after the Vietnam War and what you experienced in high school. So you were sharing how your dad really was your stabilizer through all of that.
Right. And I'll tell you what, it wasn't all just terrible things. I mean, we really experienced some wonderful gifts that, America had to offer. And one was when I went to college, the doors just flew open.
Really?
And I majored in ballet. I went to Cincinnati, Ohio.
Now, do you play any instruments?
I played the piano.
You said played?
I played the piano, and I still remember my last recital piece. I can play maybe the first 30 seconds of it. But there came a time when I had to pretty much choose where I was going to focus and ballet.
Because those are such intense disciplines.
Exactly. And the music that I learned from playing the piano really helped with understanding music.
Just giving you that musicality.
Right. It gave me a great foundation to become a better dancer, a better teacher in the future, to be able to choreograph and read a score of music, to be able to interpret that. But I went to the University of Cincinnati and majored in dance, and all of a sudden, being one of 20 dance majors on campus and going to a party and someone saying, well, what are you majoring in? And, saying ballet, it was like, whoa, this was really cool and different. And I didn't feel any of the prejudices that I felt growing up.
You started getting respect and people in awe of what you do.
Exactly.
And I can appreciate that because I know even growing up, ballet dancers were people that we only saw on stage or on television. They were like these faraway images, really. Right.
In fact, I kept ballet a secret when I was in high school. I was so shy and backwards and just, I didn't even talk about my life when I was in high school. So no one knew I was a ballet dancer. And it was kind of an escape for me because it was where I was accepted. And so when I went to Cincinnati, it was something that was just so embraced. And I was lucky while I was at the University of Cincinnati my freshman year to become a professional ballet dancer. I auditioned for the Nutcracker with Cincinnati Ballet Company, got in, and then was offered a contract. So it was really a wonderful opportunity, and I started my career as a professional ballet dancer while I was going to...
Still in school.
Right. I had a bad injury. It was my first injury when I was at the University of Cincinnati.
How far in?
It was actually my first contract year with the Cincinnati Ballet that I had some tendon problems from overdancing. Basically, when you're a dance major, you also have to fulfill your academics. So I would go to school for academics from 8 to 10 in the morning, dance in my classes from about 10 to 12 in modern dance and ballet. Then I worked for the company from about 12 till 6 at night, where I was just dancing. So I'm dancing from 10 to 6, and then I have to go to evening class because I have to still fulfill the academics.
Yeah.
So I would have about an hour's break for dinner and then go to school from 7 to 10.
And then I'm thinking, because you're in school, you can't hold back. You have to do movement full out.
Exactly. And this is not a Monday through Friday. This is a Monday through Saturday. And then, of course, if the ballet company has performances, we have performances Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So it was a crazy schedule, and I overworked some tendons and ended up having surgery during the Nutcracker time, and then I had about a 6 months recuperation.
So how did you know you had injured your tendons?
I would get up on point and wouldn't be able to roll down to a flat position because my ankles would lock, and the tendon had swollen so much.
Oh my goodness!
So
did this happen on stage?
No.
Thankfully. Oh my goodness!
Stuck on point.
Yeah. Not good.
So I had some surgery, but the good news was I could continue my ballet career and continue on, and I danced for Cincinnati Ballet for a few more years, then went to New Orleans and danced with New Orleans Ballet. Between those two companies, I trained more with the Royal in London, England. Oh. And so I had a really prosperous, wonderful career in dance.
Now, you became a principal dancer as well, didn't you?
Yes, yes.
Okay, talk to us about, especially for those who are not familiar with dance parlance, what does it mean to be a principal dancer?
Well, you start in the corps, which means that you are with all those 32 swans going across the stage. And then you promote to demi-soloist, which I would probably, if we take Swan Lake, the 4 little swans, when they're all hooked up, that's a demi-soloist.
Okay.
You promote to soloist, which are the 2 big swans that are probably the closest to the lead, and then you have principal dancer.
Which is?
And so that's kind of the progression in a ballet company.
So in terms of body, let's talk about body image a little bit, because, you know, that's a subject that is so at the fore now. You know, the country is dealing with obesity and dealing with bulimia and anorexia and all the other EAs that go with just unhealthy body images and what people are doing to augment that. So when you were moving through your dance career, did you have any challenges to keep your body at a certain weight or
You
physique?
do, and unfortunately ballet is the one dance form that is so body oriented. I was very lucky to have parents who are thin-boned and quite long in their muscle couture.
So your genetics helped you considerably.
It helped me, you know, because I have very, very small bones. But, you know, during the time, right in the middle of dancing professionally, you're always dealing with, because those guys have to be able to lift you. And you are, you know, sometimes under 100 pounds. When I first got pregnant, I was 98 pounds.
Wow.
And
at 5'5".
Yes.
Wow.
And so it's unhealthy. You know, I'm the first to say that unfortunately it can be very unhealthy. And unless you have a very strong mind on how to diet and how to take care of your body, unfortunately there are some dancers who fall into that trap of anorexia and bulimia. But I think there's more education out there. Teachers are now becoming more mentors than they are just saying, you need to lose weight. We are trained to address problems by not saying you're fat or obese, but let's look at our diets and let's see where we can become healthier as dancers. Because, of course, if you start to lose weight, you also lose energy.
Sure.
And you cannot sustain the stamina level that you need to sustain to dance those 3-act ballets. So diet is very important as far as getting the right proteins, the vegetables and fruit, and really, really eating good lean meat to help you through, you know, those long, vigorous days of performance.
So when you were an instructor at Ballet Western Reserve, how did you manage? Was this before more of the information was available?
I would mentor, you know, the students. I could see when those were struggling, and especially those who were struggling with toying with the anorexia and the bulimia.
Oh, wow.
And
did you see a lot of that?
Not so much so, because we really set forth a program that encouraged all dancers and all body types to...
And I've seen your company, too, so I can attest to that.
Right, and you know, I never would tear any dancer down for being a little bit, you know, on the heavier side. That person usually would come to me and say, you know what, I'd like to lose 10 pounds, how do I do it? And we never used the word diet.
Okay.
We never used the word diet. We would just talk about nutrition. The ballet also, in our summer programs, could do a lot more classes outside of dance. So we would bring in a teacher of history on music and dance, but we also brought in nutritionists. And they would come in and talk about healthy eating habits and nutrition. So we would tackle those problems by not saying the word diet or lose weight.
That was good.
But by really promoting a healthy eating
And that's
process.
great, because you think of the young minds that you're dealing with.
Yes,
And I'm
so
sure in terms of even the adults that they're around, they're hearing the word diet constantly, and it's everywhere, you know, on every magazine cover and every time you turn the TV on.
Right.
So that I applaud you for that, because the downside of that can be so traumatic.
Oh, it can be devastating. It really can. It can.
Well, we're going to take another commercial break, and when we come right back, we'll be hearing more from the fabulous Anita Lynn. Right back after this.
The Debórah Show is brought to you in part by L.E. Black Phillips and Holden Funeral Home, located at 1951 McGuffey Road in Youngstown, Ohio. L.E. Black Phillips and Holden Funeral Home, honoring the legacy of life.
And we're back on the Debórah Show, enjoying the fabulous Anita Lynn. So we were talking about your life as a dancer. We were talking about body type and even how the industry has come forward in terms of encouraging girls to be healthy as opposed to dieting. And again, I applaud you for that, your work as well. So I'd also like to ask you, as a dancer, being a dancer is a very silent occupation, wouldn't you say?
Yes.
And so someone like yourself, you grew up in a pretty sheltered family life. I mean, they could only shelter you so much, but you had a strong support system, and you were shielded from a lot. So moving now into the professional arena, and everything has to be an interpretation. How does someone who maybe has not known a lot of struggle and severe heartache and tragedy, how do you then take a movement that may have a lot of passion and a lot of emotion in it? How do you translate it and interpret it so that your audience can connect with that message?
That's a great question.
Oh, thank you.
That's a great question. You know, I was a very shy teenager, and I had a lot. You know, as a teenager, all teenagers have their hormones; they're just flying out, and I never verbally would come out and say exactly how I would feel. So all of this was pent up inside. And dance allowed me to express myself without having to open my mouth.
So dance allows you to burst, huh?
Yeah, yes. And you could play any role you wanted and be able to interpret it through your body, through facial expression, through just, you know, the turn of the head or the holding of the arms or the torso. But being very shy when I was in high school and growing up, and my voice would literally shake if I would have to speak to more than my family members.
Really?
Ballet really gave me the opportunity to say something without opening my mouth. So I think, to answer your question, I believe that it was the actress in me. I love acting, and I live part-time in New York City now, and one of my favorite things are to go to plays. And, you know, I love the musicals, but I love the plays because I see these enormous characters that, you know, come out on stage and they get to just completely become a different person. And we just saw Edie Falco in the play The Madrid. And, of course, her biggest role was in The Sopranos as Tony Soprano's wife. And she basically becomes a different person every time I see her.
And she's just so believable.
She's so believable. And I told my husband that you totally believe that Edie Falco is this person who's suffering on stage right now in The Madrid. Everyone else looks like they're acting the role, and that's wonderful because they're fine actors, but Edie was this person. And I feel like, you know, if I were to run into her on the street, I would just put my arms around her and say, you know, it's going to get better, don't worry. But that kind of role just would speak to me, but I could never have the voice to go out there or the confidence to go out there. But put me in a dance role, put the music on, and the music has so much to do with the emotion. So the music would just stir what was inside of you, and you could become all those different characters.
You know, I think what's so fascinating about that kind of role is that when you look at, you can take, like you said, a dance, any language, and the message comes across. Mm-hmm. And that's phenomenal. It's like you don't really need a vocal cord to do that.
Right, right. And dance is something, and you hit the nail on the head, because dance is something that can be performed in any country. And the audience attaches itself to the music immediately. And when they see the music coming alive on stage, the interpretation of that music, they have an immediate attachment and a bond.